Welcome to Woolen Spinning. It is April 6th, 2017, and this is episode 64. I want to welcome you to this place. Coming up in the show today, spirals, underspun Wensleydale singles, bastidor, and a Finnish shawl that I really haven't talked much about. Stay tuned. Hi everyone, welcome to the show. My name is Rachel and I can be found pretty much everywhere as Welford Pearls. You can find show notes and any more information about the show at welfordpearls.com or patreon.com/welfordpearls. To those who are Patreon subscribers of the show, thank you so much for your ongoing support. You're the guys that keep the show on the air week after week after week. If you're a new viewer to the show, thank you so much for checking out what the show is all about. And if you are a returning viewer, thank you especially to you for continuing to stick with me and tune in. As I mentioned on today's show, I have a little bit of spirals to share with you, and that actually falls under color studies. I have more color studies spun and I would like to share that with you. I want to mention that those who are enrolled for early access to the radio show, that episode 4, because we're in April, is now live. So please check out patreon.com/welfordpearls for more on the radio show. I also wanted to mention that at the end of March, we unlocked live streaming for the show, which is just awesome. I'm so excited about it. I was going to do some live streaming events separately from the show and from the episodes themselves, but I would like to do a trial this month and see what it would be like to actually live stream an actual episode. So stay tuned for that. The initial live streaming will only be open to Patreon subscribers just while I get my feet wet and get used to the platform and get used to sort of doing the live streaming. So please stay tuned for that. That will be the third show of this month. So not next show, but the show after will be live streamed. So if you want to tune into that, there will be an unlisted link provided for in a Patreon post. So please keep your eyes peeled for that if you would like to try and tune in. And I'm quite excited, although quite nervous about that. So let's jump into the show. I'm going to start with color studies. We've been working on this in the Ravelry group and on the Slack channel. There's been a lot of chatter about the different ways that people are spinning their color studies. This was sponsored by Farm Fairy Fiber. She dyed up 2 colorways for us, both in split complements. This particular colorway, the sunset colorway, is sort of more of a complement, but the effect is still very, very much a study in color. So I took the 4-ounce braid and I divided it into 5 bumps, and so I've ended up with 5 samples. I still have 2 left to spin because I'm not totally sure what I'm going to do with them, but I wanted to play around with some different plying techniques, which I had started to play a little bit with when I was playing with my summer colorway. So, and if you're wanting more information about sort of how I spun the summer colorway and what I did with that, I talked about that in mostly in February. So check out the episodes sort of around 57, 58 to about 60, 61. So what I did with this one, I love how this turned out. This is probably my favorite yarn out of all of the yarns that I've spun thus far for color studies. I spun a thick singles. I was aiming for roughly an Aran weight, and there are parts of the yarn that are slightly thinner, and it did come out a slightly slubby yarn because it was hard to stay really super consistent with the because of the way that I was spinning. I didn't strip the top down very much, and so I was dealing with like the entire piece of comb top, and I probably should have stripped it a little bit. But after I was finished the singles, I plied it with some thread, and I held the thread out at a 90-degree angle to the singles, and I plied along, and that created this awesome, really cool spiral technique. It took me about 20 minutes to create this yarn from start to finish, which is just insane for speed. And I really, really love the results. So I decided to take it one step further, and I spun up some thick and thin. And after I spun the thick and thin, I plied it with some thread. This didn't turn out quite as nicely as I wanted it to. I wanted it to be a lot more tightly plied, and I wanted the thread to really cut into the slubs. But the reason why it didn't go as planned is because I put in a whole bunch of beads and sequins into the thread. So I pre-threaded the thread, which is a metallic blue, and with a whole bunch of beads and sequins and just a whole bunch of different things that I could find. I put some shells on here, and they certainly make those parts of the yarn heavier. I'm not sure that I love this technique. The areas that I used little glass seed beads turned out really nicely, and they've sort of come out like dewdrops on the yarn. And I really like that effect. Whether I would do this a lot in the future, I'm not sure. These really big pieces where I put like big pieces of shell pieces on, I'm not sure that I would do that again in the future, but it was really fun to experiment and to see what it looked like on this colorway. So like I said, it's not as tightly plied as I wanted it to be. I wanted it to be more like this, but I did spin a slub yarn, and it just didn't ply quite with the same effect. So of the two, I definitely prefer this one. It plied up more like what I had in mind, but this one is still very pleasing and very interesting, and I am curious to see what they would maybe look like woven. I would like to play with that a little bit. So overall, I'm very happy with those results. Particularly this one. Have I mentioned how much I like this one? I really like this one. I am quite smitten. The cool thing about spiral plying and using thread and whatnot is it just changes sort of the look of the yarn, and it's just, I just really liked it. Like, it was just sort of a different technique. It was something new to try. It was something that I haven't done for a really long time, and I just had a really good time playing with the thread and choosing the color that I wanted to use, and it was nice to sort of branch out a little bit and do something that I haven't done for a really long time. So I'm glad that I did this. I really enjoyed making those crepe yarns that I had talked about previously, and of course I did one of them in the summer colorway and one of them in the sunset colorway, and that was sort of the impetus for playing with these spiral yarns. And I think that my foray, if you will, into spiral ply and thread plying and stuff is definitely not over. I'm going to play with it a little bit more and see if I can fine tune this spiral ply on thick and thin and kind of try to get the result that I'm looking for, because I could have plied this a lot more tightly, like I said. The way that I finished these two yarns was I steamed them on the stove for about 10 minutes each, and then I just hung them to dry. Because I didn't want to fuzz them up. I didn't want to throw them into a bath of water. They came off very balanced. They were only slightly over twisted, so I really wanted to maintain that, and I didn't want to let a lot of that twist out of the yarn by washing it a ton. So that is my color studies. So next week I'll have a little bit more to share with you for color studies, and hopefully towards the end of the month I will be finished the sunset colorway, and I will have sort of a bit of a reflection on what spinning that colorway has been like, and then sort of a general overview of the entire experience and what I've thought about it thus far. We are going to be starting a new color studies very, very soon. I have already put an announcement in the Ravelry group, and I've also put an announcement into Patreon. That next we're going to do carded color studies, and we're going to also combine it with breed studies and do it on Gotland. So it'll be something kind of different. Katrina of Crafty Jack's Boutique is helping us to bridge that and to do that. So I hope that you will consider joining us. We've kind of there were several reasons for combining breed studies and color studies, but the number one reason is that in the midst of color studies, we've kind of lost breed studies. And I think it's just because there's so many different things going on. So if we can combine them a little bit and work on both together in whatever fashion that feels natural for you so that you can participate, that I feel is a little bit more sustainable long-term. So more on that coming up in the next couple of weeks. As Katrina dies and cards up some stuff for us. So, and like I said, don't feel that you have to buy fiber and whatnot. Whatever feels natural and means that you can participate is totally fine. I did get something done this week. I had mentioned that I have underspun Wensleydale singles to share with you. So this, I have my other bobbin over there and I didn't grab it, but this was the finished bobbin of my Wensleydale singles. I had showed this last week and I was going to do a boucle, or I was just going to do a 2-ply lace weight. So this is one of those things that in the past I maybe would have called it a mistake. And I put that in air quotes because in some ways it is a mistake and in other ways it's just part of learning and part of spinning, and it just is what it is. But basically my singles are underspun. I chose a really low ratio to spin these Wensleydale singles. I think I was spinning on 8-1. And because of the long staple length of Wensleydale and I was spinning to a lace weight, I was spinning at about 36 wraps per inch. I was quite... basically the amount of twist that I was putting into the singles for the number of fibers that I was drafting means that as that twist distributes as you pull it off the bobbin to ply it, it just disintegrates and falls apart. So I basically have two choices. And what was happening when I was spinning the boucle and starting to do the first step of creating the boucle, or I guess you could say the second step, because the first step is spinning the singles, then the second step is creating the boucle before you go to bind it, which is the third step. Everything was just falling apart and it just wasn't working. So I would get like these periods of time where it would be fine and things would be working, and then it would all fall apart again because there's just too much opposing twist going into the yarn, and it was just unspinning everything that I had done. And I thought that I had put enough twist into my singles, but it just wasn't enough. So I basically, like I said, I have two choices. I can either put both of these singles back through my wheel and put way more twist into them, or I can 2-ply them, and there will be a few joins in the places that the yarn sort of isn't highly twisted enough, and I can just have those joins in the 2-ply and spin a 2-ply that is slightly higher twist to stabilize the yarn. If I leave it low twist and ply it as a 2-ply low twist, so I've got low twist singles and then low twist ply, I run the risk of having a yarn in the end that is underspun so that when you're knitting with it, it falls apart. So a way of dealing with that is you can then full your yarn. So be really aggressive about how you finish it. So, I'm talking about like the plunger in the hot bath of water with soapy water and agitating it and really like getting the fibers to felt and full together. Not felt, but full together to create a stronger yarn. Or I can ply it more tightly together and ply it at a higher twist. And I probably would still finish it in hot soapy water, but I maybe wouldn't agitate it to the same extent. So I have a decision to make. I'm not going to do the boucle because the singles, when I was plying them together and spinning them together for the boucle, it's just beautiful. Like, it's really, really lovely yarn. And because the singles are such soft spun singles, they don't feel like that really ropey like Wensleydale can feel when it's overspun. So putting it back through my wheel and adding a whole bunch of twist to that is gonna ruin it. And I don't mean ruin in a bad way. It's just gonna change what the finished yarn would look like. So I think I'm going to do a 2-ply, and I'm just going to put a little bit more twist in it to stabilize it, and then I'll finish it in hot soapy water. So I'm hoping that that'll be done for next week, and I can kind of give you a reflection on what the whole process has been like and what it was like to ply, because I'm expecting problems when I ply. So yeah, that's that. Those are my Wensleydale singles. I don't think I have anything more to say about it for now. I think I'll have plenty to share next week. I did finish a spin, which is really exciting. I wasn't expecting to finish this. It's not finished because it's not actually washed yet, or thwacked and snapped and fulled and all that kind of, well, not fulled, but snapped and thwacked and all of that fun stuff. But I did finish my Bastidor. This is fiber from Patagonia, from the southern part of South America. So if you're a Patreon subscriber and you are subscribed to the Woolen Spinning Radio, by the time this show goes live on Thursday, on tomorrow, Friday, the Woolen Spinning Radio episode 4 will go live. And Nina of Fuzzy Love Knots sent me this fiber, and she's the one that I'm actually chatting to this month on Woolen Spinning Radio, which is a total coincidence. It just happened that way that I started working on this spin. So she sent me 4 4-ounce bumps of this, and it's actually 80 grams. Sorry, it's not 4 ounces. It's only 80 grams, so about 3 ounces, which is a perfect amount because I have 4 colors, and I have this gray, I have like a navy blue, black, an ochre, mucky, muddy yellow, and a very soft, almost like a soft buttercup yellow. My favorite colors. So I'm going to spin each of them the exact same way into a 2-ply. Roughly, I think I was spinning to 22 wraps per inch. Yeah. I was spinning my singles to 22 wraps per inch, and I'm hoping for a finished yarn of approximately 14 wraps per inch. So basically, I'm expecting it to bloom quite a bit, and I'm expecting it to really puff up. It's a Wensleydale Merino cross, and the Bastidor fiber is sort of locally sourced. They're working with shepherds to harvest this fleece, and she talks about it more in the radio show. This is the first of the 4 bumps, like I said, and I'm hoping to be able to eventually knit or weave for a shawl. I'm thinking I'm going to knit for a shawl, and I think one of the Stephen West patterns is sort of what I've got in mind, and this ended up being roughly 250 yards. So I have enough, 160 yards. So I have enough for one of the colors for the shawl that I've kind of got my eye on. And if I need more, I know that Nina will send me more. So this is finished. And like I said, it's not finished because I haven't washed it yet. I did put quite a bit of ply twist into it. So it spins on itself a few times. 1, 2, 3. Yeah, 3. Yeah, 3 times, which is sort of about what I wanted. And I again, very, very low twist singles. I was expecting it to fall apart when I started to ply it, but thankfully it didn't fall apart. And I didn't have to do one join. I was surprised. I got through the entire thing and didn't have to do a join, but I plied it at 15-1. I spun the singles at 6-1. So very low twist, and then lots and lots of ply twist. So I'm hoping that this will bloom into a really lovely yarn. And already it's got a bit of a halo, so I'm hoping that that'll kind of bloom even more and that it'll have a really nice hand. I was even thinking like a striped vest, because I'll have enough for like a vest. So I might even do a garment. I don't know. I really love this yarn. It's going to be very hard wearing because of the Wensleydale. Like I can already feel like it's got some strength to it. So I don't know. We'll see. I'm kind of totally in love with it. So that's good. That's how we should feel about our yarns. I have a project that I haven't even talked about on the show, and it's finished. So I feel a bit guilty sharing a finished object when I haven't even shared about it on the show. But I didn't really show the Bastador either, so there you go. I finished the Brookdale shawl by Chrissy Graham. This is a design by my friend Chrissy, who podcasts over at Snappy Stitches. She sent me the pattern for free, which was lovely of her. Thank you, Chrissy. And the yarn that I used was my elfin wool combo spin that I had done and talked about a number of shows ago. So I had finished up this yarn, and then I sort of put it aside knowing that I would knit with it probably pretty soon, just because I loved the yarn so much. This pattern is worked from right to left, and you cast on and you build a triangle basically, and your cast off edge is the one side of your triangle. You do garter stitch increases, and then you work a sort of modified feather and fan at the other end. I had to make major modifications because I knew that I didn't have enough yarn, but the way that Chrissy wrote the pattern, I knew that I could probably play with the lace chart enough that I could figure it out, and sure enough, it was totally okay. To be able to do that, you sort of need a rudimentary understanding of how to read lace and how that translates into your knitting itself, and how to manipulate the stitch pattern so that you can adjust how the pattern falls so that it still looks right on the knitted fabric. And I felt pretty confident in doing that because you build the lace from one side to the other. So you add to the lace as you increase stitches at the one end, which is really nice because it's quite straightforward. But I was a full 20 stitches short of what you need to start the lace repeat. So I had to do a little bit of fudging. In the end, it didn't matter. It turned out perfectly. And so in total, I think I used about, well, I did the math. I used about 400 yards of yarn, and I think the pattern calls for 600. But I also knit this on bigger needles. So I can't remember what it's called for in the pattern, but I knit it on 12 millimeter needles, which is quite big for this particular yarn. So it's created this really loose open drapey fabric with just a lovely hand. Like look at that drape. Like it's just gorgeous. And then you can see at the bottom the lace. I don't think that the texture of the yarn or the colors in the yarn detracts from the lace at all. I wouldn't want the yarn to be any more textured than it is in terms of the color and the movement of the yarn. But the nice thing is the garter stitch, pretty much any hand spun looks awesome in garter stitch, almost. I personally don't like really, really marled yarns and garter stitch because I do find that the garter stitch competes with the marled yarn. I prefer marled yarns in stockinette. That's just my own personal preference. But this works really well because in more places than not, the colors of the two colorways that I plied together matched. It was odd how many times I was knitting two singles of yellow that had been plied together, or two gray or two purple. Like it was amazing how much it matched up, which you can see because I've ended up with some natural striping. The nice thing is the stripes don't go across the entire thing. Like they're kind of blotches, if you will, which sounds really negative, but I don't mean it in a bad way. And then the lace area, because there's garter in the lace as well, and then you have these really big, nice, round, open yarn overs because of the 12 millimeter needles, it just looks like more texture. So I think it really shows off and showcases the yarn in a way that I was really hoping for without having to do an entire stockinette stitch shawl, which was my original plan. But when Chrissy published this pattern, I texted her right away and I'm like, I just love that shawl. I think it's just fantastic. And she sent me a copy. So thank you, Chrissy. I haven't talked about this on the show because I knit it up over 3 nights at work. So many of you know that I'm a nurse and I work a lot of nights. I often work Thursday nights and Friday nights. And I took this project with me because I could work back and forth in the garter and really not pay any attention. So I know this sounds terrible, but I don't actually remember knitting this shawl at all because I was knitting at midnight and 2:00 in the morning. So the nice thing about that is it worked up incredibly quickly. I think there's probably only about 6 hours of knitting in this. And I did have the hiccup of having to do the math when I got to the lace section, but really in the grand scheme of things, it's so minimal. And the lace I finished in an hour, because I know it was an hour because I worked on it one evening while my husband and I were having a glass of wine, and I worked on it and I finished it and cast it off before we went to bed. So there you go. To finish the shawl, because it is so big, I'll just give you an idea of how big it is by holding it up. It's a full arm's length for me. And it goes all the way from my neck all the way down to my belly button. It actually goes even longer than that. So because it was so big, I didn't really want to dip it in water and towel dry it and go through all of that, mostly because I didn't really need to, and it's been so damp and so cold here that even though we obviously have heat in our house, I knew it would take weeks to dry, or at least days and days. I don't want to be that dramatic. But I actually steamed it. This is my new thing. I steam everything now. So I actually put it on the stove. I filled a pot of water. Got a soup stock pot, filled it with water, put my colander on top, put the shawl in there for about 4 minutes. And at the end of the 4 minutes, I had my blocking mats all ready to go. And I moved it around a couple of times in that steaming hot pot. And I pulled it out and I laid it out immediately before it cooled down. And I pinned it all in place and I left it for a day. And it's blocked absolutely perfectly. The lace has held and it's all open and it's nice and drapey. I think I would have had the same effect if I had wet blocked it. So that was just an awesome experience. It was the first time I had done something like that. And I will definitely do it again. I can see that this shawl will need some blocking because of the looseness and the openness of the garter stitch. Like, it's just going to need to be blocked to get it shaped back every so often. Again, this was my Elf and Wool combo spin. This is mostly mixed BFL and Tussa silk. It was 2 different colorways. I spun each colorway to a bobbin and then I plied them together. And it was the Brookdale shawl by Chrissy Graham. I'll just put this down. It's actually making me very warm because it's on my lap. I think that's all for tonight. I want to thank you so much for joining me and for tuning into another episode. Next week, I hope to have my Smith & U chain ply finished, and I'm hoping actually to have those socks cast on, but we'll see. That might be a bit lofty. I'm also hoping to have my Romney spin finished and ready to share with you. That was a 2-ply lace weight that I have been working on. And I will have a new pair of socks cast on because I'm going to start them tonight. So I hope that you're spinning lots, and I will talk to you next week. Bye, everyone.